Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. Maggie's running late too, so we're good. We're good. I can go ahead and get us started. I'll wait for Maggie and then get us started. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. The Affordable Housing Committee of the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is February 21st at 3:08 p.m. This meeting is being held, or sorry, 4:08 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute themselves until called upon to speak, to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute, speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Also, in order to comply with the open state meeting law, or state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by the chat function. So I'll start the roll call. Maggie Amaro-Tellez.
Here.
Thank you. Jim Toffel.
Present.
Marianne Bierling.
Present.
Myself, Sharia Jimenez, present. Olga Flores is not here, and I think also might be leaving the commission. We have ex officio with us, Corin Manning.
Present.
Thank you. Marcos Ismael
Present.
and Betty Villegas.
Here.
Thank you. And then do we have any of our regular attendees? Looks like, oh, Megan Headings, thank you. Present. And that looks like about it for our regular little team here. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is the call to the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each due to open meeting law. Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak?
There is Victoria Ellis.
Okay, great. Yes, please, go ahead.
My name is Victoria Alice, and can you see me?
No, we cannot.
Okay. Am I just supposed to speak then?
Would you like to turn on your camera?
I can do that. How do you do that?
At the bottom of the Zoom meeting, you should see a little camera icon and it should say start video.
It does not offer me that option. I think this might be audio only.
Are you on your phone?
No, I'm on my laptop.
Okay. Are you on the Zoom app?
Yeah.
I'll promote her. I
Oh,
promoted her.
here we go. It says, no, you would have to, it says you would have to join as a panelist.
Oh,
She is a
okay.
panelist.
Can you do that for her?
Yes, she is a panelist.
Okay. Is it allowing you to do it now?
She may have to sign out and then sign back in.
See it.
There we go.
Oh, there she is. There she is.
Hi.
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 Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, I do copywriting, so I started Sophia's Social Justice, and it is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I basically listen to your meetings and summarize them and then put them into a Canva and put them on the internet. And I'm part of Tucson Tenants Union, Tucson Housing Alliance for Justice, YIMBY I just joined, and I've been studying and looking at this problem nationwide. And I am a supporter of CSH and send a lot of stuff to Liz Morales about that, because I think that we can come up with a basic standardized tools and ability to look at a customer profile and break things out kind of very objectively. I'm not saying that's going to cover everything, but I'm saying that's the best effort you could give. And when it comes to affordable housing, there are very specific things that go wrong. So
I just had a quick question. Can you explain the acronym what was it, CHS for us?
I don't remember exactly what it stands for.
You mean, are you talking about HCD, the Housing and Community Development?
No, I'm talking about the people lobbying at Washington, DC to change the laws.
Oh, okay.
This is nationwide. They have webinars with people all over in every state and see what they're doing. And so I've joined like quite a few states and cities to see what they're doing for specific actions and different tools that they come up with. And so I've been sending that information to Liz Morales because she could pay for a training and you guys could see what people are doing nationwide. I can't afford that because I'm in poverty. I'm lucky to have a roof over my head. I did it by calling every single apartment in the entire county and making an Excel sheet and a Canva out of that for those who are on Social Security. So I can send that to you as well. But that's my full-time job right now, is housing. So I just want to let you know that that's what I'm doing around the clock. I'm doing case study and copywriting stuff for the social justice of making sure people are housed. My issue is that if we create a formula, basically saying how many people do we know, I created a list I called the Devil of Tucson list. And you can see that on my social media. But basically it comes down to a formula. How many people are dying on the street? I want to know. And I want to know if we're willing to accept that responsibility personally, because I'm a very spiritual person. I believe that, you know, the IRS, the Federal Reserve, the taxes, everything, you're going to have to submit to them one way or another. It's who and what you're willing to take on. So I've gathered together with other people who are not organized under that kind of manifestation, and make sure you have a bond attorney, that you have someone who can write grants. Look at what other people are doing for that. That is my suggestion, is that always look at what other people already have done and build upon that, and then come up with a way to calculate things and look at things objectively, and do not always rely on the money system. There's a few book suggestions, but one of them is Gentrification is Inevitable and Other Lies. And that gives a lot of case studies of why if you keep submitting to a system that doesn't support housing rights in the beginning, you'll never actually house people. So you need to look at what the objective problem is towards building and construction and contractors in your city, other than just zoning. And that's pretty much all I had to say.
Thank you. Do you go by Victoria or Alice, or how do you like to be called?
You can call me Victoria.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. We appreciate it. Thanks for speaking. Was there, we can't really take any, we can't really, I'm not sure if there's a specific agenda item you want added, or if there's, but at this time, I think we could probably move on to the next agenda item unless there's something specific.
You could write down, investigate CSH methods, talk to Liz about it.
I'm not sure what that stands for.
And I know the acronym world is exclusive. Hold on.
Shay, Victoria, if I can interrupt, this is Ernesto. You know, this was just a public forum. She's allowed to make some statements, and then now it's time to move on.
Okay.
We could talk about future agenda at another time.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have some form of maybe follow-up. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, definitely, you know, heard. We've heard, we appreciate your feedback, we hear you, and I think we all have similar, you know, sense of urgency for sure. You know, we're all here, you know, mostly volunteering our time also to work on these issues. So definitely, you know, yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, we will look into that and see if there's something we want to add for a future agenda item. So thank you so much, Victoria. And want to, let's see, move on to the next agenda item. Is there anyone else in the audience who wanted to speak?
That's it, Shay.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on to the next item, which is the affordable housing goal for the city of Tucson. Jim, do you want to go ahead and take the lead on this? This is Jim's
My baby.
spot here, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing today?
Really good, thank you.
Good. So, actually, I'd just like to ask a quick question. Who's going to be coming to the mayor and council study session tomorrow? Warren, Jan, I knew you were coming in. Shay, Maggie. Okay, so before we jump into this, if we can, I would just want to talk about quickly what's happening, make sure everybody is up to speed. So we provided 5 recommendations to mayor and council. If you recall, they came out of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee on what we felt like the city should do. And so those were sent to mayor and council about a week ago. I think that an update went out today. I think it's going out today with the 5th item. But just to kind of rehash what those are, the first one was to reinstate the Housing Trust Fund to help fill project gaps. The second one was to direct development services to review and change zoning regulations in order to encourage affordable housing projects. That was in line with HAST item number 5. The third was in line with HAST item 9.2, which was to direct staff to evaluate the potential of adding an affordable housing in a future bond or tax measure to go to the voters. The fourth was to codify a fast track approval process on affordable housing projects, specifically LIHTC projects, because of the statutory deadlines with development services. And the 5th was to direct staff to explore options for providing funding to help offset the additional costs of installing EV infrastructure. So those are the 5 recommendations that we're making to mayor and council. They're going to be having a study session tomorrow, starting at noon. We're the 3rd item on the agenda. So about 10:30. I guess I'm going to get up and kind of speak to each of these items and why they're important, and hopefully we're going to see some changes and some things, some of these move forward. So I'm excited about it because we've been working on these for a couple of years, and this is like the first, potential win. So any questions on that? Thoughts or comments?
No, that's exciting, Jim. Thank you. Yeah, really exciting.
Jay and I have met with Ward 1, Ward 3, Ward 6 in the mayor's office to talk through some of these. I think for the most part, the feedback we've gotten is pretty good. There was a couple of difficult questions asked, but I felt like we had good responses. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay. Actually, hey, can you guys see the PDF? Can you see the PDF?
Yes, I can. Thanks,
Okay.
Jim.
All right, so this is something that we went through. I guess we adopted in June of 21, so it's been almost a year and a half. And I think it's good to kind of refer back to these once in a while. Because we had some goals for both the commission as a whole and then for the subcommittees. So the mission statement is the commission is going to review, investigate, and recommend actions to mayor and council based on research data and inclusive public input to increase the number of housing units that will develop and preserve affordability for all Tucsonans, including renters, homeowners, and those without housing, to protect our barrios and communities from rapid change and displacement, as well as structural disinvestment, and to cultivate landlords and developers as partners in providing equitable, accessible, and quality housing. So that's our mission statement. The goals for the Affordable Housing Subcommittee are to provide a set of recommendations to mayor and council on activities, levers, tools the city can leverage to increase the momentum around affordable housing, which I feel like is what we did and we're presenting tomorrow. To identify new funding opportunities on affordable housing, that's both short-term and long-term. And that's also part of, I think, what the recommendations are. And the third is to deliver a sufficient TBD number of new affordable housing units within the city of Tucson. So the key here today that I really want to talk about is this TBD. One of the things that we talked about doing is establishing a goal for the city on the number of new affordable housing units within the city at some point in the future. And what that duration is and the number of units is completely up in the air. But I'd like to, if we don't have a goal, I don't know that how do you measure success, I guess, we may not hit it, we may hit it, I don't know. But I think it's a healthy conversation to say, what should we be striving for as a city in terms of the number of units? Are there any questions on the goals? Okay. So I'm gonna share another screen now. So this was sent out to everybody about 2 weeks ago. It's an Excel document. Hopefully it's showing up okay on your computers. Can you guys see this? Okay. So this is everything that I know of currently in the pipeline. And this is in Tucson and surrounding communities. You can see there's one project here in Marana for Dominion. So I think in terms of developing a goal, it's important to understand, what's out there right now in the pipeline as a baseline. So I'm going to do a sort on this. Sort based on the status. Okay, so right now there are 3 projects under construction. So Gateway, I think actually this is about complete now. It was supposed to be finished in December of last month, or 2 months ago. This was 120 units by La Frontera. Newport at the Rodeo is currently under.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, Jim, but I see a question from Megan.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Megan.
Sorry, I probably could have waited as well, but as you're going through this, are you able, it looks like some are preservation. Will you be able to identify what's new construction versus preservation?
Yes, I was thinking about we could do that in the notes column. But we could add a column if you'd like. So, okay. Yeah, so this is a preservation. I don't consider Milagro and Oracle preservation, but Tucson House definitely is. I think that's it, isn't it? Sleepy Hollow preservation? Is that new?
No, that would be a
No.
no.
Yep.
That's new. Oh, and Western Winds, that's preservation. Okay, yeah. I think that's it.
One just minor thing, Jim, on tomorrow's mayor and council, we're taking the 4 projects that I don't see any of them here that will be applying for LIHTC this time around.
Can you give me any information on those?
Yeah, and I'll set there, it's all available now on the mayor and council, but I'll send you a summary of the projects info that we have. That's
Okay.
public now.
Do you happen to know the unit counts?
I can bring that up while you're talking.
Okay, all right. So Greg Moore has a 4% LIHTC project, 107 units. It's scheduled to finish the end of this year, I guess. Newport's also going to finish the end of this year. Okay, so final approval process basically means that they're either finishing up the construction drawings and going through the city permit process, or they're close to it. So Cascade Apartments was a 9% project which was submitted last year but did not receive an award. But La Frontera is working to get that out of the ground. They told me they have, probably shouldn't be sharing the gap, but they've told me they have a fairly significant gap on the project. Mercy Housing, they're rehabbing Western Winds, which is an old HUD 202. It's over by the Tucson Mall. It's 100 units, and then Starwood and Impact Residential are building 261 units. Partially in the county, it's off of Valencia Road over by the casino. It's partially in the city, partially in the county. Dominions, so those are all in final approval. I think this one's actually final approval now too. So the Safford is a 200 unit project off of Portero by Dominion. Is Sleepy Hollow one of the new projects, Ann? No,
Not this year.
not this year. Okay. That's another La Frontera. And we have Milagro and Oracle. How's that coming?
Good.
The plans are getting developed?
Yep. Going to construction in June.
Okay, awesome. And then we got West Point Apartments Phase 2. I think that's one of the new projects that's going to get submitted for 2023.
No,
No,
not that we have, not that's part of the ones that submitted funding to us.
oh, it's not.
Nope.
Okay.
Um,
GA Han has a project off of Ajo. I don't have any details on it other than it's 100 units and they're trying to do a 4% bond deal. And then Gorman has Tucson House, obviously that's a huge project with 480 units. So let's see here, preservation. We have so it looks like right now in the development pipeline, there's 4 other projects down on this list. They're all probably 60 to 80 units each.
we, Jim, for new units, it's 220. For rehab, it's 96.
Okay. So there's a total of 1,900 projects currently in the pipeline. 604 preservation, 1,371 new. Marcos? Oop, you're on mute.
Yes, just real quick on the impact residential, the project you mentioned on Valencia, it's all in the county, and it's, you have Valencia and Country Club, but it's
Oh,
closer to Valencia and Cardinal.
thank you. Okay,
That was it.
Maggie?
So this is a list of projects for Denver County units of affordable rentals. So are we gonna create a comparable list of homeowners?
It's really hard to hear you, Maggie. Can you speak up?
Sorry, I'm usually very loud. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
That's much better.
Okay, I'll get closer. Just, I'm wondering if we're gonna have a comparable list of affordable homeownership units?
I think we should include that, but I just don't have access to any of that data. Do you have it?
Well, I know our information of what's proposed for this year. I know, for instance, what happened to the Menlo Park units and, that people bid on, so those are 11 or 14. I don't know where they're at. And, we're gonna do a Barrio Anita project, proposed, I mean, we're in the works, and that's in, I guess, including ADUs, it's 8 units.
How many units was it total? You're kind of cutting out there.
It's 4 single-family homes and 4 casitas, so 8 units of
Oh,
affordable.
okay.
And Jim, Ben, correct me if I'm off the top of my head, I think what we know is in the pipeline is approximately 46 units of affordable homeownership. And I'm sure there's a lot of projects we're not aware of.
Okay. So I guess I'd like to throw it out there and ask you guys, first of all, so from a time frame perspective, you can see that based on the stuff that we have, these projects are going to run through 2026. So we're in 2023, so it's 3 years out. So one of the decisions we need to make is what is the duration that we should be measuring this over, and then, all of these projects are not guaranteed. I hid the gap. Well, you can see there's a financial need on some of them that needs to get closed, and so I don't know that all of them are going to get built, but what do you guys think is a reasonable goal for the city? And some of these are outside the city, so if this one's in the county, it really can't count it. Same thing with the Marana project. So that actually takes the projects in Tucson, new construction, down to less than 1,000. Maggie?
I'm sorry, I didn't put my hand. No, I don't have a question.
Can't hear you, Maggie.
No, I don't have, sorry, I didn't put my hand up. I'll do it.
Okay.
Megan?
And I'm curious, do you have the total number of new units built in years prior to have an understanding of what could be feasible? Just curious. You have all this great data, so I just assume you have a plethora of it in your back pocket.
Well, I have this. This is, let's see what I have here. Well, this is the percentage of projects. I'd have to go back. I've got all of the 9% awards. I don't have everything. I don't have all the 4%. I don't have access to some of that.
And we can compare notes there. I know Ben created a list of projects the city provided funding to as well. That might be helpful. And Jim, I mean, I think there's only been a handful of 4%. So my suspicion is your data is going to be pretty accurate.
Yeah. So just, kind of big picture right now. There's obviously a ton of political goodwill at every level to address housing affordability. So at the state level right now, the governor's office is pushing to reinstate the housing trust fund to a tune of about $150 million. That's going to be huge. They also want to expand the state LIHTC program, which is going to be really helpful as well, because that stacks with the 4% tax credit. Nationally, one of the items that was in the Build Back Better plan was a 35% tax credit, which stacked on the 4% tax credit. So the 4% tax credit creates like a 40% subsidy. And if the 35%, which is paid over 5 years, had passed, that means there would have been close to a 70% subsidy, which would have made all the difference in the world for the 4% going forward. Because, large part those basically go unused right now. So a lot of it's dependent on what happens at a state and a national level. We as a city, I think, only have the ability to, provide a supplement potentially. And, obviously if the bond measure gets passed, that's going to incentivize a lot more housing down here than if it doesn't. So I think those are some of the things that I've been thinking about when I try to think about what is a good goal.
Jim, a couple other things I think about when I think about, and I appreciate you doing this, that I think having a target for the city, both citywide, and then also should the Norte Sur high capacity transit project move forward, I'm also interested in creating a sub goal for that particular area. But a couple other things that have been going through my head to help is, I agree, Megan, kind of what's the historic data and what we've been able to achieve in the past, but how do we, if we're going to be a little more aggressive and have more funding available, what could that look like moving forward? But the other piece to that is need. And I know understandably everybody asks how many units do we need? And that's a really hard question to answer. That said, really grateful that the county has allocated funding to update the housing market study, and really want to make sure that that's included. In terms of need, what we do know is, based on data, historically, 75,000 households in Tucson are housing cost burdened. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to build 75,000 more units tomorrow, but it's a data point that I think is worth showing. The need is far more than what we can build in 5 years. But I still think that's a component of really thinking about how to create good targets. And Neto, can you bring in Ben as a panelist too? I think he has data that might be helpful to this conversation.
Will do.
Shay?
Yeah, thank you for stepping in. And I was just gonna say that I thought that the city was gonna be working on a more comprehensive data plan, sort of housing analysis plan for us, so we could really dial these numbers in, because I think that there's a lot that, as Maggie mentioned, there's a lot that's kind of missing in the full picture. So thank you, Anne.
Megan?
And I think this probably relates more to that, like putting together the data that the city's working on, but being able to track at what target income these are providing housing to, because to your point, I mean, like, it is really challenging that we still, even producing a lot of these, like, I think the Marana project, which is in Marana, but I think that's higher. I think it's workforce housing, a little closer to workforce housing, potentially. I could be wrong about that, but some of those are going to be serving higher income. And so a lot of what we're seeing is the need at such a low income level. And so are we really, maybe having some metrics that address a certain percentage in that extremely low income, and then just a total overall unit count would be really helpful going forward.
Okay, Marcus?
Yes, regarding housing data and study, some of you may have heard the state's task force release their findings and their recommendations, and one of them involves I think creating a kind of like a state dashboard or data clearinghouse. So you can, if you get the Arizona Housing Coalition's emails, they send out a link to that study that you can see. I don't know if they put anything behind it as far as funding yet, but it's one of their recommendations, so that may be something to look forward to and try and connect. And then, as Ann mentioned, the county has allocated funding to work on a dashboard tool that would help us locally. So hopefully so we have the state's recommendation on our radar, and we may be looking to reach out to them to find out if there's any way that we can work with them on this goal.
Did I state that correctly here, that the state's provided recommendations from the housing study, which includes an updated map dashboard at the state level?
Something to that effect, yes. I'll see if I can find their link and post it in the chat for everyone.
And what did you say previously, that who was engaged to redo the map dashboard for Tucson?
So that's where, before that was a collaboration with Pima County, and whether or not it's updating the map dashboard or creating some new tool that can, my understanding, and Marcos, you can chime in more, a goal is to be able to create something that can be updated easier, and ideally have more up-to-date data. So a lot of what we did before was census data, which is too old for purposes of housing data, since it's 2 years behind.
Yes, that's a correct assessment. That's what we're hoping to have, something that will provide, more live data, I guess, up-to-date data on our housing production. So sounds like that's kind of what the state's looking for as well.
And one thing I'm really hopeful, Marcos, just as an FYI, that we can take, once there's a little more information, we can have the commission weigh in on what data the commission feels like is really important to include.
Yes, and I think we'll be doing the same thing with our housing commission. And I know we'll be having discussions on future agendas with our commission as well.
Maggie?
Is there value, or do we have a comprehensive list of an inventory of existing units? And with that, I think that would be valuable to know if we don't, what do we have affordable right now? How many units, both LIHTC, or just rental home ownership, because there's some, I don't know how to count that. And what would we count? I know, the city, county provide down payments. Would we consider that an affordable unit? You have to. Can't be permanently affordable, but at least at the initial purchase of a house, it is. So I don't know if there's value to that, but I've always wanted to know how many affordable units do we have in our community? Do we know that?
So I can get you data on all existing federally subsidized rental housing pretty readily. And also, just to answer a couple of previous questions, between 2012 and 2022, there were about 23 total developments that were using either LIHTC or home funding, so federally subsidized.
Wait,
They
say that
created-
again? Say that again?
Can I have a slide that this is on, and I can just send it to you. It'll make it easier.
Okay.
But approximately 160 units a year were developed between 2012 and 2022. Now, that's an average, not a median. So keep in mind that some years are strong, some years are weak. And in like 2012, there were almost 300 units produced. In 2018, there were closer to 60. But
Ben,
it was.
Is it possible for you to share your screen with us right now, just so we can look at?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful for all of us to see right now. Thank you.
All right, can you see that slide?
Mhm.
Okay, so as I was saying, between 2012 and 22, there were approximately 23 developments that used LIHTC or home. Now, there could be other developments that used other funding sources that are not here, but from our records and tracking, that created about 1,597 units in that 10-year period. And so that averages out to 160 units a year for whatever that's worth. I think that what that potentially speaks to is economic capacity and subsidy that exists in the system, but clearly leaves out a whole bunch of other variables. It's just kind of a snapshot in time that is useful for what it is, and that's how many units exist that are federally subsidized.
How about affordable ownership though that has federal funds in it?
Are you talking about home ownership? Because you're breaking up, it's hard to hear you.
Yes, God, my laptop, sorry. Yeah, affordable home ownership that have also received federal funds.
So that is absolutely a much heavier lift, as it is individual cases that are somewhere between 40 and 60 individual home owners per year going back, and they're all individual records. So yeah, we could likely get that if.
Well, but for instance, land trust, we receive home funds to develop affordable home ownership.
Mhm.
But that's not, I don't think it would be in your slide because it's home ownership.
Yeah,
So-
this is only rental housing. It was only looking at mostly large scale rental housing, but there was also some smaller scale rental housing as well.
You know, what's disappointing to me about this slide is it's trending down.
Yeah.
You look at it over the
Yep.
10-year period, it looks like in 2012 through 2016, we were averaging close to 200 units per year. In 2018 and 2022, it's closer to 100 units per year.
And so, to be fair, Jim, if I was to update this, but this is months old at this point, to current projection, it might spike just because of some other recent developments that are not included in this.
Mhm.
But that's also, I noticed that too right away, Jim, but I think that's also consistent with even when you look at the amount of permits that are pulled every year, those have been trending downward also for the past decade. And some of the other data that HCD had compiled, I think it all is kind of consistent, you know, I mean, it's kind of, and I think it's nationwide, you know, every community is just struggling to produce units.
The contractor's fault.
And let me know when you're done with this. I'll pull it down.
Megan?
I think to your earlier point, that I mean, part of why LIHTC is such a big part of this conversation is because, well, A, it's easier to track than I think a lot of the other types of funded projects, but you know, it does seem like I'm sure that those spikes have to do with the number of LIHTC awards in Tucson versus, you know, not getting as many. So to go back to a conversation months and months ago that, you know, we were having, is a huge part of it is trying to make sure that we have an equal share of those LIHTC awards.
Yeah. Hey, Betty, you had your hand up earlier. Is there something you wanted to say?
No, I think Ben kind of answered some of it. You know, I think it's really hard to know. I think we miss a lot of, you know, what's going out there because there is no way for us to track. You know, I know that Barrios Unidos Land Trust has housing that, you know, that they fund on their own low income people, but we don't know what those numbers are at this point, you know, as an example. And, you know, they recently, or they're in the process, my understanding is that of purchasing properties and to even have more, which, you know, I don't think that they've asked for subsidy at this point. So it's really hard for us to get an accurate number, and a lot of them are naturally occurring affordable housing. I know we've lost a lot of that, but there are still some landlords out there that are offering, you know, affordable rents to their tenants, you know, long-term tenants. So, you know, it's we're not going to be able to capture everything, you know. We can sure try, but I don't think it's possible, you know, really, at this point.
Maggie, did you have another comment? Oh, Megan?
Sorry, I did have another one because I do think that the conversation around homeownership is really important, but I think it gets even more complicated if we're talking about existing units versus new built units. And it would be, I don't know if there is a way, I'm curious if there is a way to have a better understanding of new built units, because I think a lot of us doing home ownership, you know, first time home buyer work and assisting those individuals are working with existing units. Like, we're not building new. And I know Habitat's numbers, they struggle to produce a number, you know, their numbers have kind of gone down and to produce a year. So I don't know if anyone has thoughts on how we could track new development of like newly constructed home ownership units, but I think that's even more challenging and hard to conflate with what's existing that we're just helping individuals purchase.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only really way that I know of is who's pulling permits and for, you know, for major rehab, as an example, you know, and then of course MLS has a list of, you know, who's buying, and we can get the information from there as to what the purchase amounts are and where they're located.
Mm-hmm.
But I think permits is key, and then, you know, just trying to find out, as I know I sound like a broken record, but you know, from planning it from both the county and the city, what is in the pipeline for for new development of housing of single family residents and townhouses and condos, you know. we don't know that, you know, we've been asking for it and we've yet, as far as I know, I've yet to see anything. And the price points, you know, I mean, even to me, it would be interesting to see, you know, what are people building, you know, you know, how many non-affordable housing is out there versus affordable, you know, so that we can at least know what we're up against too.
Well, I could tell you, I sat down with Art Wadlin in the last year. And we came up with a list of about 16,000 multifamily housing units in the pipeline for Tucson and surrounding communities. There's a lot of market rate stuff that's out there in the pipeline, but I don't think that most of it will get built because the Tucson doesn't have the labor force to build it all. We can, you know, the city of Tucson's construction and the subcontractors and the trades have the ability to maybe build 2,000 units a year. If they're pushing it, maybe 2,500. And you know what happens is if there's more work out there than the capacity, the price goes up until the project doesn't work. And that's what I've been seeing and I've been battling is, you know, we have these affordable deals out there and, you know, they're competing for the sub trades with the market rate deals. And the subs are so busy, they're adding, you know, 10, 20, 30% sometimes to their normal bid price because they don't have the capacity to do it. And, you know, so if they get it at the higher number, they'll figure it out. I've had this conversation with a number of people.
Yeah, you're basically working weekends at that point and taking no time off. So yeah, that's what happens. So and if you're gonna ask people to do that, they're gonna charge you the most that they can, you know, they're not getting a break. So I understand. You know, I feel for the contractors. I do. I have a heart for contractors. My dad's a subcontractor, you know, y'all are in a tough spot and it is a smaller market. So it's just, you know, it's difficult out there.
Yeah, I mean, as a point and example right now, how busy things are in Tucson is we're building a Spring Hill Suites in Avondale up in Phoenix right now. And I was asked to bid a Spring Hill Suites in Marana. And it's the exact same project, exact same finishes on the exterior and the interior. You know, they're literally identical projects. Our Avondale project came in at 141,000 per room, and the one in Marana came in at 190,000 per room.
Yikes.
And you know, so I started calling guys and say, "What's going on? Why is your bid so high?" And they just said, "We can't do it. We really, you know, we didn't want to say no, we're not going to bid it, but the reality is we don't have capacity. So if you give it to us, we'll figure it out." But Maggie?
Well, I kind of want to go back to, I guess, what Megan was saying about the new builds versus, you know, so I do think that it's crucial to count the down payment assistance. You know, FHR, you guys do how many of the home funds? You do so many of them. I think that, you know, we're using federal funds to help people buy a home. And I think we need to add those numbers in there as affordable housing units, even though, you know, they're not new construction, they're being converted. And, you know, based on what Jim's saying right now about, you know, construction being a really tough business right now, and new construction, then maybe that's even more reason to really get behind converting existing to affordable. Doesn't it make more sense? To me, it makes sense to do that then. If we're thinking new construction, and whether it's multifamily or home ownership, And, maybe we need to kind of pivot a little bit and think about how do we convert existing inventory to become affordable units?
I don't know. This is complicated, Maggie. And I do super appreciate, I mean, I think FHR is doing like 80% of the home down payment DPA, and we are very committed to it and want to continue to strive and do that. But I would caution of like part of the issue is like it's harder and harder for us to do that now because the supply is so low, so folks are not even able to find a home. And so I think this conversation in particular to me is a little bit about what is being produced new that's affordable, both for home buyers and for rentals, and that there should be also a conversation happening around what are we maintaining as affordable, what are we still connecting to people that's affordable. But I think it is different, in my opinion, from the conversation around what are we able to produce new, and especially for the reasons Jim is stating, it becoming harder and harder to do and the costs going up to produce new is terrifying. And so like that is like the harder that gets, the less we're going to have of new supply. And so we're going to, it's still an enormous problem that I think has to be addressed in different manners, I guess is my thought around it.
Well, the other, I think just in line with that, so if we set a goal of 2,000 new affordable units over the next 10 years, and we hit that, but there's 1,500 units that fall out of compliance, is the real number 500 or is the real number 2,000? I mean, should we be looking at the total stock versus just the number of new units?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I appreciate something that Ben continues to harp on is, if we're building new, but allowing some of the stock to fall out of affordability, what are we doing at the end of the day? So I credit him for continually just reminding us how important that is.
And just to share a little bit more information there, we monitor and track every unit that exists in a period of affordability and have now incorporated in that monitoring an effort to reach out to a project owner 3 years prior to the project aging out of affordability so that we can see if there's anything that we can do to extend the period of affordability, like money for rehab that would automatically extend the affordability, or just offer anything that we can to try to keep that housing affordable. And so we have information on what exists in the continuum from when the deal was done, what the period of affordability is, and when it's going to age out of affordability for every project that's been federally subsidized.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with Steve Hastings yesterday from Foundation for Senior Living. And he told me that based on their LIHTC awards, they're going to have one project per year fall out of the 15-year affordability window for the next like 6 or 7 years. And, so I said, well, you could, flip it to yourself and do a 4% rehab and take care of some of the maintenance. And he basically said that the compliance monitoring on the projects is so cumbersome that he wants them to fall out of compliance, and he's going to maintain them as affordable, but he doesn't want to have to deal with, he has one inspection per week across all of his properties. And he says it's very cumbersome and it's very taxing on his organization. So they're going to maintain the affordability, but it's just not going to be required by a program.
There is no doubt that federal regulatory requirements can be onerous to a property owner.
Yeah, but I don't know how we track something like that either. So in terms of, I guess, just kind of going back to the, Ben, if you want to stop sharing, I think you can. Just going back to the original purpose of this, we don't have to make any decisions today. But I wanted to start the conversation, and maybe I'll email out kind of my notes and the updates to the spreadsheet as soon as we're done. Ernesto, I'll forward it through you if that's okay.
Yes.
But, you know, maybe we continue the conversation next month and, you know, again, the two questions are how many units and over what duration? And then, you know, we can talk about preservation and do we want to set different goals for different income levels and things like that. Part of me says, let's keep it as easy as we can. But
Yeah, I'm curious too, Ben, I don't know if you have some numbers as far as that graph that HCD has about the number of permits pulled. To me, that was a really over time when you look at that, because there's been a few housing booms, right? There was a big boom, I think, end of the 90s, and I'm curious what the conditions are. What were the conditions politically, economically, you know, labor-wise that fostered those booms, right? Because we've been able to, I mean, the contrast was so stark to me when you looked at those, because it was like some years we were able to produce in excess, you know, thousands of units, and then some years just a few hundred. So it was, like you're saying, it really is. It seems highly variable. Depending on what's going on at the time. But I would be curious to have that data again. I thought that was really helpful to look at.
I haven't seen that. I don't know if, Anne, you know anything about the number of permits over time.
That was, and Corin can jump in here, that was part of the map dashboard. We did provide a tab on that. And so that data would have come from PDSD.
It's still available, right? It's still online. Okay, I'll take a look.
all right. Okay, well, that's it. We'll continue this next month. Thank you.
Wait, I guess we should close out the meeting. I think that's all we had. We have next steps, and as our next meeting time for the general commission is March 2nd.
Actually, hey, Shay, I think we got agenda item 4.
Oh, oops. Oh, updates, HCD updates, Neto and Ann. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
I'll jump in with a couple, and Neto or Allison, feel free to jump in too. As Jim mentioned, tomorrow's mayor and council meeting has a few items related to HCD. So Jim mentioned the commission item, so that should be interesting. You know, I would say timing wise, 12:15 to 12:30, I would anticipate that item would be happening. It's always on the YouTube live if you wanted to check that out, or you can always watch it after. A couple other items on the agenda, just so you're aware, the rental recommendations that we talked about at the last commission meeting will go to mayor and council tomorrow. There is also a substantial amendment related to a lot of our HUD funding. And so to help explain what that is, as you all know, every year HCD does the annual action plan together with Pima County. And, you know, some years we do our best guess at the best, how the money should be most efficiently spent to create the biggest impact. But some years what we don't know, and in particular, the years that we're amending now were the coronavirus CARES Act years. So we were allocated coronavirus CDBG CV dollars and emergency solution grant CV dollars. What we didn't know was what was going to come forward with Home ARP and with the state and local fiscal recovery funding. And so now that we have more of the puzzle pieces, we're going back to say, this is actually how we are proposing to spend the money within all of the puzzle pieces that we have in order to ensure we meet the timeliness at the expenditure deadlines. And so that will go to mayor and council tomorrow. There is also, you know, a pre-exclusive negotiating agreement on the 2 home ownership projects that HCD has been working on in Ward 1. So excited that is with the city is working with FSL and Poster Murdo McDonald on the 2 home ownership projects, and that will go to mayor and council for the contract tomorrow. So lots of things moving forward. The other update that's relevant to this group in terms of units, and Jim, I didn't see this on your chart yet, but we finally got our award letter from Arizona Department of Housing on the Amazon Motel. So that is real. That is 30 units of permanent supportive housing that we're hoping to crank out sooner than later, because we fortunately receive funding via HUD for the services piece. But that's 30 units now of the existing motel. And then through our choice grant, we are proposing a second phase through choice, should we get that, which would be an additional 43 units of permanent supportive housing. So total on that site, we're looking at 73 units, but hopefully 30 sooner than later, converting the existing motel.
Is that a bond? Is that 4%?
No, that is through Arizona Department of Housing's grant program. It was
Oh, that's that hotel. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a few updates. I don't know if Neto or Elson, you have any more to add?
Just to add to tomorrow's mayor and council meeting, Jim had asked at the outset of the meeting what commissioners tend to be there. In addition to Commissioner Jim Toffel, Jay Young, Bernstein, Mike Edmonds have written that they will be there. So that won't violate quorum. And again, study session starts at 12, but our item should go on soon after, 15 minutes or so afterwards. That's it for here.
Okay, does anyone have, while we're all together, any items for future meetings? Go ahead, Jim.
So I met with Steve Kozachek today to talk about tomorrow. And I asked him if he had any feedback for the commission and anything that he would like us to consider. And he's, it wasn't an easy ask, but basically what he asked was that if we could consider how we could how the city could incentivize taking some of the big box retail stores such as Park Place Mall and Alcon Mall and other dilapidated retail centers and converting them into a mixed use facility, which includes multifamily, a multifamily component. So he said that he was hoping that that would come out of CEHD as a recommendation, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. But I think it would be good for us to put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, I've heard that one in several public meetings where, you know, a lot of the residents in historic neighborhoods don't want any affordable housing in their neighborhoods, but they're all for putting, you know, affordable housing on major commercial corridors. Yeah.
But they might like affordable home ownership,
What?
you know? Yeah, I've heard that. You know, you think about all of the shopping centers that are these vast parking lots.
You what? What did you say? It's hard to hear you, Maggie.
What is going on? Sorry, guys. Just, you know, you think about all of these, you know, shopping centers with their vast parking lots, tons of vacant buildings. I don't even know how they. So I think it's a great idea, but I would also want to add, of course, affordable home ownership there, you know, so.
yeah, I think it's a both and. I mean, it's not we need it at every scale, every scale.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot. I think a lot of council offices are very, and I've heard that from Councilmember Cunningham as well. And I think it's great. It's something we've been trying to accomplish or make easier through some of our overlays, like on Sunshine Isle. But I think there's other tools we can consider more broadly across the city to make it easier to convert some of those sites to multifamily. And I think actually, you know, depending what action and mayor and council take tomorrow, based on the recommendations from the commission, as we're looking at incentives for affordable housing, I think it really connects to, you know, what incentives we want to put in place, or, you know, what barriers do we want to remove to multifamily in general, not just affordable housing. And so I think these are very intertwined, and it might make sense to tackle those two issues together.
You know, there's two projects that I'm aware of right now in Tucson that are trying to do that. Don Bourne is going to start demolishing Foothills Mall here in the next month or so. And he wants to develop, he's got a vision where he's going to develop, I think, 1,200 apartments with retail, shopping. It's kind of a live, work, play type of environment. And then Larson Baker has the Chroma Annex, which is off of Speedway, just east of Country Club, where the Whole Foods is. And he's, you know, there's the vacant land, and then there's where the bike shop was and the Bookman's, and that strip center. He has a plan for developing that into multifamily as well. But we could get one of those two I could ask one of those two to present and ask them, what are things that would make this more attractive from a city if we want to hear from them? I don't know. That might backfire.
Yeah, I'd be curious as well, but Jim, both of those developers, I mean, neither of them are affordable housing developers. I mean, more than likely, those are going to be market rate projects. And that's to me where,
Yeah,
I think that's what the general public has a hard time understanding, is that by the time those types of rehab projects, I've told people in meetings before, I mean, you know, Jim, like the amount of money and investment you have to put into a rehab of that scale, you may as well in a lot of cases start over and build new. Like, it's just not, there's some value in the land maybe, but really, like a Kmart is not a housing type that was set up to be multifamily. You know, there's no plumbing facilities, there's no, you know, there's nothing. And then not to mention dealing with like the fire and the life safety, and like, it's a great idea, but it's like the dollars and cents of it. I don't, if it was feasible, people would already be doing it, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical of this every time I hear this as a viable option, but I think we should talk about it, and I'd love to hear. But yeah, my guess is that those other projects are going to be very expensive, market rate priced types of projects. I don't see how they would be affordable. But let's add it to the agenda and invite the invite the players and see what they have to say, if there's any hope for them squeezing in some affordable units.
I'll talk to you offline about it, Shay.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to hear their perspective. If anything else, just to have that, you know, those stories to share, you know, because it does come up a lot. I've heard it so many times, and I'm like, I don't think that this will work the way you think it will, but we can look at it. I mean, I think it's worth looking at it since it comes up so often. All right, thank you all so much. Let's go ahead and adjourn. Yay, we're adjourning early. Thank you all. Thank you for everyone's time. All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.